My name isn't important, but I'm a 22-year-old guy who grew up in what I thought was a pretty normal family. I've always respected my parents. My dad is one of the hardest working men I know, and my mom, well, she has always been the soft, nurturing type. She's on the heavier side, but she's beautiful in her own way. To me, she was the definition of innocence. If anyone asked me to describe my mom, I would have said, she's a woman who could never hurt anyone, especially not dad. But life has a way of showing you that the people you idolize aren't always who you think they are. A few years ago, when I was in college, I started noticing something that I couldn't quite put into words at the time. My mom had recently become close friends with this guy, we'll call him Mark. He was introduced to our family through some mutual connection, and before long he was coming over a lot. At first I didn't think much of it. Mom's always been social and Dad trusted her completely. Mark was friendly with everyone, including me. He'd sit at the dining table, crack jokes, and even bring food sometimes. But there were moments, tiny, fleeting ones, when I'd notice something off. For example, if I walked into the living room unexpectedly, I'd sometimes see them sitting a little too close. Nothing inappropriate, but just too comfortable. Or I'd catch Mom smiling at her phone in a way that seemed different from when she texted her regular friends. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, why would I suspect anything? This was my mom. My mom. She loved Dad, she loved me, and our family wasn't perfect, but we were solid. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. Then one day, I decided to give my parents a surprise. I came home from university without telling them. Dad was at work and the house seemed quiet. I thought it would be funny to sneak around and surprise Mom, maybe catch her watching one of her soap operas. I walked around to the side of the house, toward the bedroom window. That's when I heard noises. Strange noises. At first, I thought maybe she was watching TV too loud. But the closer I got, the clearer it became. My stomach dropped. I don't think I'll ever forget the moment I looked through that window. There she was. My mom. With Mark. Not just talking. Not just being friendly. They were together in the worst possible way. I froze. My whole body went cold and I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I stumbled backward, trying to process what my eyes were seeing. My mom, the woman I thought was pure, loyal, incapable of such betrayal, was cheating on my dad. I don't remember how long I stood there, but eventually I left. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. I just walked away, pretending I had never come home. But inside, something broke. That day was the beginning of a secret I've carried for years. After that day, nothing felt the same. I tried to act normal, but inside I was torn apart. Every time I looked at my mom, I saw what I had seen through that window. Every time Dad smiled at her, every time he trusted her completely, I felt like screaming. But I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to tell him. For weeks I battled with myself. Should I expose her? Should I confront her? Or should I bury it and pretend it never happened? The thing is, once you've seen something like that, you can't unsee it. I couldn't shake the images from my mind. And worse, I started noticing even more signs, things I had brushed off before but now made sense. Mark was around more often. Sometimes he'd show up when Dad was working late, and Mom would act so casual, like it was nothing. But I could tell, there was an energy between them, subtle but undeniable. One night, curiosity got the better of me. Mom had left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to take a shower. I don't like snooping, but something inside me snapped. I needed proof. Something to confirm I hadn't imagined what I saw. So I opened her messages. What I found, it made me sick to my stomach. There were photos. Intimate photos. Videos I didn't want to watch but couldn't stop myself from clicking. Messages that were so explicit I had to put the phone down and take deep breaths just to steady myself. My mom, the woman who packed my lunch for school and kissed me goodnight, was sending things I couldn't even imagine to another man. I remember sitting there in the dark kitchen, phone shaking in my hands, feeling like my whole world had collapsed. The shock of catching her in person had been bad enough, but this was undeniable. This was evidence. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone. Why? Because I felt trapped. If I told Dad, his world would shatter. He loves her so much. I couldn't bear to see his face when he realized the woman he trusted was betraying him like this. So I carried the secret alone. But carrying it came at a cost. I became withdrawn. My grades in college started slipping. I didn't want to hang out with friends. Every time I saw a happy couple, I thought about my parents and how fake their happiness was. There were nights when I couldn't sleep at all. I'd just lie there replaying the scene at the window, replaying the messages I'd read, asking myself why. Why would she do this? Wasn't Dad enough? Wasn't our family enough? The worst part was facing her. Mom would greet me with her usual warmth, asking about my day, making me food, telling me she loved me. And all I could think about was how much of a liar she was. Sometimes I'd catch her texting, smiling at her phone, and my chest would burn with anger. But I'd force myself to look away. It felt like I was living in a nightmare where I was the only one awake. Dad didn't suspect a thing. He'd laugh with her, watch TV with her, go to bed beside her every night without realizing the betrayal happening right under his nose. And me? I was drowning in the truth, suffocating under a secret I couldn't tell. Every time I thought about coming clean, my mind froze. What if Dad hated me for being the one to break his heart? What if Mom turned everything around and denied it? What if our family exploded and it was all my fault? So I stayed quiet. But silence comes with a price. And the longer I stayed quiet, the heavier the weight became. I don't know if it was guilt, anger, or just sheer exhaustion, but eventually I started slipping. My friends noticed I wasn't myself anymore. One even asked if I was depressed. Maybe I was. How do you even describe carrying a secret that big? I thought maybe time would help. Maybe Mom would stop. Maybe she'd realize what she was doing and come back to her senses. But I was wrong. If anything, things only got worse. Mark's visits became more frequent. I even caught glimpses of him sneaking out of the house once when Dad wasn't home. Mom brushed it off as nothing, but I knew the truth. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, and I was powerless to stop it. Keeping the secret almost destroyed me. Weeks turned into months, and the burden never lightened. If anything, it grew heavier. I couldn't focus in class. I'd sit there staring at the professor, but my mind was back at home, replaying everything I knew. Every time I saw my dad, the guilt gnawed at me. He'd ask about my studies, give me advice, and sometimes even talk about how lucky he was to have Mom. That hurt the most, his blind trust. It made me feel like I was betraying him too just by staying silent. I told myself over and over, don't say anything. You'll break the family apart. But the truth was, the family was already broken. We just didn't know it yet. One night, I came home late from campus. Dad was sitting in the living room, exhausted from work but still smiling when he saw me. Mom wasn't there, she had gone out with friends. I didn't even ask which friends anymore, I already knew. That night, as I sat across from Dad, I couldn't take it anymore. Dad, I started, my voice shaking. He looked up from the TV, smiling. Yeah, son? For a moment, I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. But then the words tumbled out, messy and broken. There's something you should know. About Mom. The smile faded from his face. What do you mean? I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. I've seen her. With someone else. I've read the messages. Dad, she's cheating on you. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Dad just stared at me like he couldn't process what I'd said. His face went pale, and for a second I thought he was going to laugh it off, call me crazy. But then he saw the tears welling in my eyes, the way I couldn't even meet his gaze. Are you sure? He asked quietly, his voice almost breaking. I nodded. I wish I wasn't. But I am. I expected him to explode with anger, maybe shout, maybe even storm out right then and there. But he didn't. He just sat back, staring at the wall. His hands were clenched, but his eyes were empty. The rest of that night is a blur. He asked me questions and I answered them the best I could. I told him about Mark, about the visits, about the phone. I left out the worst details because I couldn't bring myself to say them aloud, but it was enough. When Mom came home later, Dad didn't say a word to her. He just pretended everything was normal. I don't think he wanted to believe it until he saw it for himself. The days that followed were tense. Dad was quieter than usual, distant. Mom acted normal, laughing and cooking like nothing was wrong. But the house didn't feel the same. It felt like a bomb ticking in the background waiting to go off. And then it did. One evening, I heard shouting from their bedroom. Dad had confronted her. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Her denial, his anger, her excuses, his pain. At one point, I heard her crying, swearing it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But Dad didn't buy it. He couldn't. Not after what I had told him. That night was the first time I ever saw my dad cry. He wasn't the kind of man who showed weakness, but when he sat alone in the living room, his face buried in his hands, I realized just how deep the wound had cut. And I hated myself. Because even though Mom was the one who cheated, I was the one who had put the truth into his hands. I was the one who had shattered his world. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my fault. It was hers. The confrontation didn't fix anything. If anything, it made everything worse. The trust was gone, the house felt colder, and the air was thick with tension. Mom tried to carry on as if nothing had changed, but I could see it in Dad's eyes. Something inside him had broken. And I couldn't help but wonder, had I done the right thing? The night Dad confronted Mom was the night everything changed. Our home, once a place of warmth and laughter, turned into a battlefield of silence and resentment. Dad didn't leave immediately. He still loved her even if he couldn't say it out loud. And Mom? She tried to sweep everything under the rug, acting like the confrontation had never happened. But things weren't the same. They couldn't be. For weeks I watched them drift apart. Meals at the table were quiet. Dad avoided her eyes, and Mom carried herself with a strange mix of guilt and defensiveness. Sometimes I caught her sneaking glances at her phone, and I wondered if it was still going on. I wanted to scream at her to demand she stop, but I was exhausted. One night, Dad and I sat in the living room after Mom had gone to bed. He didn't look at me when he said it, but his words hit me harder than anything I'd heard before. "Son, thank you for telling me the truth. But I wish I didn't know." I didn't know how to respond. He wasn't blaming me, not really. But I could feel the weight of what he meant. The truth had broken him in ways I couldn't fix. A few months later, Dad filed for separation. He didn't tell me the details, but I knew it was because of her betrayal. He still provided for me, still loved me, but the spark in his eyes was gone. The man who had always been my rock looked older, weaker, like life had taken something from him that he would never get back. As for Mom, she tried to justify herself. She told me things I didn't want to hear, about how she felt lonely, about how Dad was always working, about how Mark made her feel alive. I didn't care. None of it mattered. To me, there was no excuse for what she had done. She had destroyed our family. I started avoiding her. I'd spend more time at college, stay with friends, or just lock myself in my room when I was home. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The bond between us, mother and son, was shattered. Eventually, Mark disappeared from the picture. Maybe Mom ended things, maybe he got bored. I never asked. By then it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Years have passed since then, but the memories haven't faded. I'm older now, but that experience left scars I still carry. Trust doesn't come easy for me. Every relationship I've tried to have feels haunted by the image of my mom at that window, by the sound of my dad's voice cracking when he realized the truth. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by telling him. Part of me still feels guilty for being the messenger that broke his heart. But another part of me knows he deserved the truth, no matter how painful it was. Living in a lie would have been worse. As for Mom, I keep my distance. I respect her as the woman who raised me, but I don't admire her anymore. The innocence I once saw in her is gone. And my dad, he never remarried. He's quieter now, more reserved, but he's still my dad. I do my best to be there for him, to fill some of the void that her betrayal left behind. This isn't the kind of story that has a happy ending. It's not a story I ever wanted to tell. But it's my reality. I caught my mom cheating, and in that single moment my childhood ended. To this day I've never told anyone else. Not friends, not family. This is the first time I've put it into words outside my own head. Maybe it's a confession, maybe it's a cry for closure. All I know is that secrets like this don't disappear. They stay with you, shaping the way you see the world, the way you love, the way you trust. And sometimes I wish I had never come home that day.